utah.gov rural page, rural programs page. And I'm essentially going to walk you through where you're going to find the application, where you're going to find the instructions to the application, and then we'll run through the instructions sheet. So if you're interested in the BEAR grant this year, you'll go to our programs and click on rural development. That's where we are. We're going to go down and scroll through down to our programs. And you'll see here, business expansion and retention BEAR. If you'll open that tab, it'll give you a brief explanation of what the BEAR program is about. But you'll find, for more information and to apply, an application link and an application information and instructions sheet. So we're going to open that first, just so you know, this is your pathway to get here. For this information, you'll be able to click on that link. It'll open up just like it does here for me. You can download it so that you have it, keep it, and let's run through it. Okay. The BEAR Economic Development Projects Grant for fiscal year 2020, the application information and instructions. The beginning of the sheet essentially tells you who qualifies, explains to you that this is a grant, but that it also is a post-performance grant. Most all of you are familiar with that, which means that you must budget your organization such that you can perform your tasks, complete your project, pay for them, and then ask for reimbursement from GoEd. That's what post-performance means. Who's eligible this year? Same as last year. According to statute, public, nonprofit, private organizations primarily engaged in economic development efforts in rural areas of the state. They include the 4th, 5th, and 6th class counties and the cities and townships within those counties. And in 3rd class counties, those who qualify are areas of population less than 20,000 and a median household income of less than 70,000. Those who also may apply are federally recognized Indian tribes within the state of Utah, associations of government, business resource centers, and small business development centers. There's an explanation here in this note that essentially says that if, for example, you are an AOG and you've received a BEAR grant, you can perform your project within the parameters that are explained above, 4th, 5th, and 6th class counties, or 3rd class counties in areas of population less than 20,000 and household incomes less than 70,000. The grant is funded through the Industrial Assistance Fund, state of Utah, and according to statute, it is funded to the tune of not less than $350,000 this year. We'll explain a little bit more on that, but I want to get into the application, where to find it. There's an online portal. We've already introduced it to you, but so you know, again, we would take you again to business.utah.gov, to the programs page and rural development page, and you'll find it in BEAR under application. And we'll get to that there in just a few minutes. Let's continue on with our instruction sheet. The application will be open for a period of approximately 6 weeks. Again, through that portal, you'll be able to open the application, enter information, and if you need to leave that application and come back to it at a later time, you will be able to do that. So you'll have some time to go in and out of it as you need to make sure that all the fields are filled out and you feel like you have enough time to do that. The application essentially is going to request that you justify the need in a dollar amount for the grant. Again, it's project-based, so your project will be designed by you. And in your application, you must receive, and I've tried to underline throughout the whole document, key information that you will need to know to concentrate on as you make your applications. But an application must receive a score of 65 or greater to be considered for an award. Now, we didn't have that parameter in there in last year, but through our scoring, we feel like this threshold of 65 points is very attainable. We had only a couple of applications that scored below that last year, but we don't anticipate that'll happen this year. In other words, 65 points is very attainable if you pay attention to the requirements. And there will be a matching fund opportunity, a bonus of 10 points on your scoring if you can tell us that you have some form of matching funds that contribute to your project, your BEAR project. I've got an example here, and I'll just read this for you. An economic development project that involves a match to the BEAR grant funds is highly encouraged. Bonus points will be given to a project that includes matching funds. And now I've given you an example here. This, again, is just an example, but something that you can understand clearly, I hope, that will help you in your budgeting. For example, an applicant may describe a 50-50 match in the proposed budget of a project. Continuing the example, in the project design and budget, an applicant would describe a project with a proposed budget of $40,000. The applicant would then ask for BEAR funds at a level of $20,000 and explain how matching funds will contribute to the overall project of $40,000. The match may be in the form of monetary funding from the applicant, a private donation, in-kind contributions, or any combination of these. Now, a 50-50 match is not required. A match may be less than 50% or even greater. That depends on your design, what your resources are, what you anticipate will be the cost of your project, and who will be participating. So don't worry too much about the idea of a 50-50 match. Only consider the idea that a matching contribution to your project will be highly favorable in the application project or process. The terms for the grant will be for the fiscal year starting July 1 and go through June 30th of 2020. And your projects must be completed during that fiscal year. Partially completed project won't be funded. There is an exception to the idea of according to our past programs, which we are kind of referring to as traditional BEAR activities, which involve visiting businesses, coaching them, finding out what their needs are, and finding references for them. That is an activity we call a traditional BEAR activity. That can be claimed on the quarters. I'll get to that. Otherwise, if you have another type of project, we would look for you to complete the project in full before you ask for reimbursement. We'll get to that here in just a minute. How do you submit an application? We've followed the path through the website. The application is here. You'll click on it. I'll open it up here in just a minute. All applications will be due no later than June 14th. That gives you approximately 6 weeks to design your project and figure out how much it's going to cost, budget it out, draw up a timeline, and so forth, and get it submitted no later than 5 p.m. on that day. We won't be accepting any applications beyond that point. So look at that as a hard date for cutoff. Important dates here. We released, in other words, we've opened the portal to the application as of yesterday. We're having a webinar right now. Our applications are due on the 14th, no later than 5 p.m. We'll immediately start the application scoring period. June 14th through the 24th is our ideal time frame. And we hope to have notifications to you much sooner than we've had in the past. In an ideal world, that will work out. I hope that I can make that happen so that you will understand what your award will be before the July 1 date in which you can begin your project. What are the components of the application? This sheet hopefully will explain that to you, and also the point values which will be used to score your application. I've got an important note here, and you'll see this commonly made throughout this whole application process. Please pay special attention to the following 3 statutory elements as you work through the application. How will the BEAR grant, number 1, assist new and existing rural businesses? Number 2, how will the BEAR grant influence rural job creation? And number 3, how will the BEAR grant diversify Utah's rural economies? I'm going to take one break, 1 second. Sorry about that. And back to it. The components of the application begin with your general information, who you are, what you represent, your address, and so on and so forth. We will also have a list of supporting documents that you will upload. That's worth 15 points. Then you will go on into your project design. Project design will be valued at up to 20 points. This is where you will tell us what your project is. I've tried to underline that so you can see that. What is your project? And again, please concentrate on these 3 statutory elements as you design your project. The more you pay attention to those 3 things and can justify your project under those 3 criteria, you're going to score well, and it's also going to help you focus on what project you're going to do and how you're going to get it done. Got an explanation here that if you're involved in traditional BEAR activities, as I tried to explain earlier, you will do it as a project. So basically, you'll design the project of activity, tell us how you're going to get it done, and how much it's going to cost you to do it. So pay attention to that explanation. Design your traditional BEAR activities as a project. Second part of the application and scoring will be the scope of work. This is how your project will be complete. We have the what in the project design. The scope of work is going to be how you will do it. How will you execute this project? What work will be done? What supporting activities will be involved? Who are the participants, and so forth. You'll see also that I've underlined in each of these sections, the scope of work will be recorded in your BEAR project contract. So as detailed as you can be, but also succinct. make sure that we can see what you're going to do, clearly defined and kind of tightly drawn so that we can put it in your contract and it's very clear that we can see what your project is, how you're going to get it done. The next section will be your deliverables and outcomes. That's worth 20 points on your application scoring as well. This is basically going to be what's the finished project going to look like. Again, we're paying attention to these three categories or criteria that are in statute. And we are going to record those in your contract as well. Deliverables and outcomes, as defined by the applicant, will be recorded in each project contract and will be reviewed by GOED's compliance division to determine the true completion of your project. Especially take a note that in this section, you will be recording your goals and your benchmarks and how they will be completed or what they will look like upon completion. And know that, again, this will be in your contracts. I've got a sample deliverables and outcomes matrix table. This would be helpful for you to draw up so that we can see, perhaps in a spreadsheet form, what your goals are, what your benchmarks are, what your activities are, and how they will look as they go through the completion project process. Please design this based around your project and how you will accomplish your project, and submit that as a part of your deliverables and outcomes portion of the application. A timeline will be required. This is worth 10 points on the application. Timeline will also be recorded in your BEAR contract so that we can see that you generally made progress on your benchmarks and goals over time, over the course of the fiscal year. And that also helps you in your planning so that we can see that, or you can plan and anticipate when your benchmarks will start and when they might be completed. Of course, you're going to give your best estimates here. We're not going to hold you to the fire if you take an extra month to complete a project that you anticipated would be completed sooner. This is just a planning element that we would like to see and to help you meet your benchmarks and goals. It will be recorded again as in the project contract. Budget is required. It's worth 15 points. And this will be very, very critical. We will want to see how much your project will estimate in an estimated level, how much it's going to cost based on how much you're going to request, what your activities might be. Now, this is just a sample. Your project is going to be your design. You may not use these categories at all, but this is set out as an example for you to see that you would say, okay, we're in, for example, business consultation. Our grant request is worth $10,000. We have a private individual who will contribute $5 and an in-kind contribution of $5. Therefore, our total would be $20,000. Just a sample. Some of you worked through this last year. It's very similar. We will also give you 10 bonus points here as you explain your matching funds and record it in your budget structure. This will be critical because this will help you justify, and we asked you that on the top. We're going to ask you that at the very beginning of your application. how do you justify the dollar amount requested for your project? If we can see it in a budget and we can see that it's clearly understood that you will need X amount of dollars in order to accomplish your goals and benchmarks, then you'll score well, but it also will justify the dollar amount that you will request. The next section of the instructions page basically goes over how scoring will occur. It repeats the categories: organizational information, supporting documentation, project design, deliverables, scope of work, and so forth, and the point values. I would highly recommend that you take these points, numbered points, and you will see there that if you pay close attention to those numbers as you design your project, you'll score very, very well. And you're likely to get closer to, as close as possible, if not 100% of your project grant ask. There's also an explanation here of, I've got here, for example, in project design, it's worth 20 points. You'll have a maximum of 1,000 words to write that into a section. I'll show you here in a minute, but that's essentially what that means. Please do it in 1,000 words or less. Scope of work in 1,000 words or less, and so forth. This will limit, but also make succinct your explanation of your project. In the end, how do you get reimbursed? Some of you are familiar that have been involved in the BEAR before, that prior to last year, we had a system that where you would simply request of the department, ORD, a reimbursement. We changed that last year and created a portal, online portal. Again, you will be able to find that on the website. If I were to show it to you on the current one on the website, you will see fiscal year 2019 quarterly reports and reimbursements claim form. That's where you will find what you would need in order to accomplish or finish your request for reimbursement. That will be the same in this next year. I have a similar portal to help you make reimbursement requests. Emphasize here that the GoEd Compliance Department will identify key elements from each application to determine project completion. That is going to be in your contracts. Mentioned up here that your scope of work, your design, your deliverables will all be recorded in the contract. That's what the compliance department will be looking for. Key elements of the project completion will come from applicants' submitted project design, scope of work, deliverables and outcomes, timelines, budgets as recorded in the contract. We would love for you to please design your projects that will occur over the time frame of the fiscal year. In the past, we've had some real challenges, especially with our contracts in amending them. In other words, if you get in the middle of a year and decide you don't want to complete this project, it will be really difficult to go in and amend that contract. Not impossible, but there are some hoops to jump through that are challenging. So we're highly encouraging you to draw up the project that you're going to do and stick to it. And we will prefer not to amend any contracts if, in fact, there has to be an amendment. If it's minimal, let's keep it to a minimum. Otherwise, we would like to not do any amendments to the contracts after 6 months, which is January 1, 2020. Contact information is there. This attachment down here through the instructions page is basically going to say who the qualifying third-class county areas or communities for bear activities are approved. If you see them in red, for example, the city of Elwood in Box Elder County has a median household income of $78,000. That is above the threshold of $70,000. Therefore, bear activities won't be done in Elwood. But if you're in Fielding or Honeyville or Howell or any other Willard, for example, population is under 20,000. Median household income is under 70,000. They're a qualifying community for bear activities or bear projects. Same for any of these other third-class counties that are listed here. So that's an attachment for your reference to know where you can do your projects and who qualifies for those kind of activities. So that's a rundown of the instruction sheet. You're welcome to call us with questions, and we'll refer to it so that it's clear to your understanding. But I'd like to go now to the form in which you will find the application. So back to business.utah.gov in the rural page, we're going to look at the FY 2020 application. If you're clicking on that, it's going to take you directly to the application. Now I'm going to switch over to the back end of our forms so that I can click through each page. What you will need to do is answer the questions. Make sure you've checked the boxes before you can go on to the next page. But I will not use this form. I'll go on the back end so that I can just see how each page will look. What you will find also are hyperlinks on this front page. The link and the instructions that if you click on them, it'll take you to the instructions sheet. You'll find this throughout the whole application. Anytime you need to click on instructions per section, you will find a link so that you can get back to this page. So I'm going to take you into the back end. You will not see this, but I'm going to put it in preview mode so that you can see each page and how each page functions. This is essentially exactly what you would see on your application. Front page, basic instructions, who qualifies, to apply, what the parameters are around the functionality of this program. I've got a note here that I hope you pay attention to. Applicants are highly encouraged to pre-write answers to the questions that will be asked on other pages, and then copy and paste them into the respective fields. Each field has a limit to the number of characters that may be used. But if you will pre-write what you need, then you can copy and paste it, upload it into the fields, and it'll hopefully speed up your application process. So you will have read the instructions. This box asks you if you've read the instructions. If you have, you'll click on that and it'll allow you to go to the next page. The next page will look something like this. It'll look exactly like this. It will have 5 points here. Your point values are in each of these fields. How much of these is this information worth to you when it comes to scoring your application? Your entity information. Who you are, where you dwell, what your federal tax ID number is, and so forth. Who our primary contacts need to be, emails, phone numbers, titles, and your secondary contact information. Here, you'll see asterisks by the fields that are required. And if you were to fill a part of this out and go to the next page, you'll get a prompt and say, hey, you didn't finish this page, please go back and finish the page. So anytime you see an asterisk, it's a required field. It needs to be filled in, otherwise you won't be able to move to the next page. Page 3 will look like this. Your point value on supporting documentation is 10 points, up to 10 points. And here are fields where you will upload information that we need. An executive summary of your BEAR project. We don't want this to be more than 2 pages long. So if you're in a field, we will require that you give us a 1 to 2 page executive summary of your project so that we can see the bullet points, basically, the basics of your projects and how it's going to happen. You would choose that field, open it up in your computer, find the document that is appropriate for you to upload to fulfill that, and it'll upload there. And you'll be ready to move it on. If you don't, again, this is the asterisk, so it's required. Got to put something in there. Your executive summary, just 1 to 2 pages. And then you've got a list of your stakeholders. This is the same as we've asked in years past. Partners, what roles they will perform. This third one is letters of support from all entities involved in your project. That means if you've got organizations that are going to be helping, we'd like to see letters of support. If you've got activities involving a city, but you are a county applicant, please make sure that you get a supporting letter from the city or any other organization that might be involved in your project. Again, you will just click and upload the documentation that you need. This gives you an added response. So if you have multiple letters to add, click on another response, it'll open up and you can add as many letters as you need to and until you're done with that. Then we're going to request for your entity's W-9 form and just to click and upload. That will be a 10-point value in this section. Going on to page 4 is where we're going to see a 1,000-word limit to your project design, your scope of work. Let's preview that. Your scope of work and your deliverables. So this is where you're going to put all the meat of your project, what your project is, how your project will be completed, and what it will look like when it's completed based on these 3 parameters set to us through statute. So please, again, pay close attention to these 3 things. If your project design is centered around answering those 3 questions, and we can see that your scope of work is doing that, and your deliverables will address those 3 things, then we're going to be very pleased with your application and anticipate that you'll have an excellent project for this next fiscal year. Each one has a point value, 20, 20, 20. You may be scored by those who score up to that amount based on their interpretation of your explanations. And then the point value will be generated and blended, essentially, to get you a qualifying score. Page 5 will be your timeline. We're going to ask you to briefly explain the timeline, just 200 words or less. That's plenty of words to explain your timeline. And an upload. Give us a spreadsheet of your timeline, much like the example that I gave in the instruction page. Your budget's worth 15 points. Again, a brief narrative of your budget 300 words. This will give you an opportunity to justify your need for this grant. Again, there's a reference to the instructions if you need to get back there. Upload your budget, preferably in a spreadsheet form so that we can see it itemized, essentially. How much money you need, where it will be spent, any matching funds that might be helping and contributing to it as well. And if we see a match explained in your budget, you may want to explain that match again here in this field, and we will want to see it recorded in your budget spreadsheet. If you upload all that information, again, let me go back to this page 4, just concentrating on this. This is where I would highly suggest that you put, you write these sections and then copy and paste them in there. If you're confident enough to write the whole thing in here, you're welcome to do that, but it's always better to draft something and then upload it or copy and paste it into these fields. The final page is essentially your opportunity to request your amount. Now, this year's law changed so that the cap of $350,000, there is no cap. We'll be straightforward on that. It'll be up to you to prove that you need a certain amount of money based on your budgeted project and the timeline and time frame and deliverables that you expect to give. You'll make your request there, whatever it is. You'll enter it, and then you will acknowledge this box. Applicant understands final allocation of funding will be determined by application review, scoring, and grant funding availability. Application review will generate percentile ranking, which may be used to calculate final allocation. Participation in the application does not guarantee funding or funding at the applicant's requested amount. When you acknowledge that, and every other page and field is finished, then you can push the submit button, and we will receive the full application. That's essentially it. So every bit of information you will need will be in this instruction sheet. And when you use this in coordination with the form or application, online application, you will do well. Shouldn't have any problem. If in the event that you need to get in and out of this application, this field up here that with a checkbox that says save my progress and resume later, you can check that and it'll save the progress, the state in which you are in. Whatever you've uploaded will still be there when you come back to it. This gives you time to come in and out of the application and complete it as you need to. So that's essentially it. I am going to entertain questions. I think Nan will probably have some of those questions compiled and willing to hear them now. Nan?
Great. Thank you, James. That was absolutely wonderful. So we do have a question, and it says, just to be clear, the grant request is the total we are asking for, not the total with matching funds?
Yes, so your matching funds is essentially going to be a justification for. In other words, yes, you're right. If you have a project that you anticipate is going to be worth $40,000, and you know that you have matching funds that will contribute to that $40,000 to the tune, in this example that we gave, of 50%, then your ask might be $20,000. So yeah, you won't say, hey, I've got matching funds of $20,000, so I want that and the $20,000 in match. We want to see that the match is a contribution, basically a community contribution to your efforts that has a dollar amount applied to it. It could be an in-kind contribution. It could be a donation or anything such as that. But design your project so that we can see that whatever your ask is justified against the expenses that you will lay out.
Great, thank you. We've got another question. Can we get a list of projects that have previously been approved?
Yeah, we could generate something like that. This is different. So let me give you a couple of examples of some creativity that occurred last year. In BEAR programs past, it was pretty much concentrated only on what we would call the traditional BEAR activities, that of making business visits, interviewing them, finding out what their needs were, and then giving them referrals to and delivering them to the referrals that they need to overcome their challenge or meet their needs. That's traditional BEAR activities. That's basically what this was based on. Last year, we kind of opened this up to your creativity that says, in our area, our economic development needs are and will be affected by. So you design it. You could be as creative as you want, but you're going to have to justify what your project is against your budget and against your need. And so when we get down to your deliverables and your explanation of deliverables, you're probably going to have to make sure that you can clearly define that what you've done or what you will do is justifiable against those 3 statutory criteria. If you can do that, apply a dollar value against it, and we can see that it's a measurable completion. In other words, we can see an economic development impact that's measurable, then it's probably going to be approved as a project. So yeah, we had, for example, in Daggett County, they established a kind of the first working hub. They asked for several $1,000s to establish that working hub. They've completed that, and they'll be seeking reimbursement here in the next month, which is kind of exciting. Got some very unique economic development projects, one down in San Juan where a community garden was in need that affected the poorer communities that could use the economic, or not the economic, but the community garden for the benefit of their health and welfare, for example. Those are 2 very unique projects, not the same as seeking out business needs and finding references for them and so forth. So look at the impact that a project could be based again against those 3 criteria in the statute that is well spelled out throughout the instruction sheet and throughout the application, and identify a measurable economic development impact project for your area and show us a good design.
Great. Here's another question. Can an agency submit more than 1 application?
No, we will take only 1 application per entity. We will accept 2 applications per county area, qualifying county area. So for example, Emory County is a qualifying area county. If there are 2 economic development entities who would like to apply, now that could be a city, that could be a nonprofit organization, but we will accept up to 2. It could be the county itself, but if we've got 4 applications from one single area, we will award 2. So that's the limit there, and an entity in and of itself can only apply for 1 BEAR grant. So their ask and their design and their justification for funds needs to be clear. If it's a regional effort, for example, on the part of an association of government, again, only 1 application, but show us your project that is worth X amount of dollars that spans across your region, and we'll accept that.
Along the same lines, we've got a question. Can you have multiple projects in a scope of work, maybe phased or something like that?
Yes. So last year, some folks who had new, for example, community projects also were engaged in the traditional BEAR activities. So essentially they had 2 projects going on, 2 separate things going on. So you'll want to explain that in your application, that we're going to do number 1, this traditional BEAR activity, number 2, this community impact project. A great example of this last year was Box Elder County, the SBDC up there, who had a wonderful community activity that involved bringing in QVC, which was awesome, that led to some business pitches, that led to opportunities there, but they were also doing their traditional BEAR activities too. So you would want to delineate and explain and budget those separate activities, but they can, yes, be on 1 application. When we get to that kind of makes me want to go, and I hope you can still see my screen, and I think they can, right?
Yes.
Good. So if I'm going to, again, business.utah.gov, leave that site and go there. Just so you know, on the back end of the completion of your project, when it's time to get reimbursement, you're going to go then to your quarterly report and reimbursement claims form. This claim form allows you to choose categories. It's going to tell you what you will need in order to make your claim, but we've got this separated into 3 different categories. You've got your business outreach, which is traditional BEAR. You've got your business advancement, such as economic gardening. You've got your community economic development, plan implementation, or other projects. So these are 3 separate categories, but you may design in each of your applications any 1 or all 3 of these elements into your project design. You may have BEAR activities that you're doing, but also be involved in a community-driven plan or implementation, such as gap analysis or area sector planning or something like that. And this reimbursement allows you then to choose the categories under which you will seek reimbursement, 1 or all of them. So hopefully that answers your question as to whether you can have more activities than 1 on an application. It does allow you to do that. But you could also say, hey, our community, say a city, just wants to do, and for example, we had a city in this last cycle that all they wanted to do was have a private consultant come in there and coach them on their incentives package that they will try to develop to draw in new business. It was only a community economic development category, which of course was approved. Hopefully they're executing on that. They've got their private consultant helping them in. It's costing them a certain amount of money. And when they will make reimbursement requests, they will only click that box category and begin to fill out that section. But if you had all three categories, you can click on all and you'll be requested to fill in all of the information per that category. So I hope that explains that you can do more than one thing.
Yes, back to the issue of who qualifies. What if you're a tribe within the bounds of a city, the population is above the 20,000 population threshold, but the median income is below the American Community Survey?
Yeah, we're only looking at population, parameter, and median household income. So the population is at a threshold by statute at 20,000. And your median household income is at 70,000. There's not an exception to that. That's statutory.
Okay, I don't see any other questions on the chat box. Last call for questions amongst the group. Well, James, you must have answered them all, or of course, we would encourage all of you to reach out directly to us, James in particular, for bear questions. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate with us today, and thanks particularly to James. You did a great job again, and as we stated before, the webinar recording will be available on the ORD webpage, hopefully early next week. So if you do have questions and you want to go back and look at the video, you're certainly welcome to do so. With that, we hope all of you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for participating.